right, first session of the day, so everybody's just waking up. All right. I've been told I should hide my face while we're doing this because for the recording works better. So let's see. I think not sure that's going to be enough, but hopefully that's enough. Yeah, if Clara or someone would just say, do you just see the big screen share and all good? You don't see me anymore, hopefully. All right, I'm hoping so. All right. You see my picture. Okay, let me see if I could get, they said they wanted that hidden. Okay, well, may just have to be like that because all I see is that for hiding it. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll continue on. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll get going here. And we're going to talk about an ambitious digital experience platform for the future of Australia's government. My name is Kristen, and for this project, I have been the business analyst and technical lead, among other things. Sadly, Stuart was supposed to be with me on this talk, but he had some pressing family issues. So we're sending out a big Drupal hug to Stuart, and my son drew this last year for the Drupal Cares campaign, and it's his birthday, so happy birthday, Eric. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the different organizations that were involved for this project, why they decided to do it in the first place, the different pieces, how it was put together. We'll show some data from the launch of the first site on the platform, some challenges and wins, the future, things we know for sure, and some things that may happen, and we'll have some wrap up. As far as Q&A, if we have time, then certainly we will do some Q&A here. Otherwise, we have some options. So feel free to throw your questions in the Q&A tab. And if we have time, great. Otherwise, I'll save those and we can run through them one-on-one, or we're hoping to have a BOF about 15 minutes after this session. Okay, so this is just going to give you a big picture about what we're talking about. This project was for Geoscience Australia, and they needed an efficient, cost-effective, secure, and resilient digital experience platform that allows users to discover, identify, and consume Australian Earth data. So that just kind of frames the whole talk so that you have an idea of what kind of the big picture looks like. And we'll start off with the different organizations involved for this. So there's amazing collaboration with a number of different organizations, and starting with Geoscience Australia, which is the agency that decided to embark on this journey. So GA, as they're also known, is a preeminent public sector geoscience organization in Australia, and they apply science and technology to describe and understand the Earth for the benefit of Australia. They have a number of programs, and here's just a few of them. So Digital Earth Australia was like the pilot project for this particular platform that we built, and the idea was to make a platform for many sites, but we focused on Digital Earth Australia, or DEA, as we also call it. So GA, Geoscience Australia, they needed a really amazing design and strategy partner. So they partnered with Today, and they are a purpose-first business designed from the ground up for impact. And they have a mission to use creativity, design, and technology to tackle important challenges and affect change. So Today was focused on UX, content strategy, design, and they worked with GA for a couple years actually in order to really understand all of their programs' needs and their users' needs. And once they realized, they wanted something like a bigger platform, it was something that they decided it would be good to bring in Salsa Digital, and we're a partner with today. And Salsa is an open source company made of digital engineers from across the globe, delivering technology and innovation to open governments. So at Salsa, we have our motto of, we want a more open, more connected, and more consolidated government. And at Salsa, we focused on the backend and the middleware and collaborating with Today and GA for the project. So like I mentioned, DEA, or Digital Earth Australia, was sort of the pilot for this platform. And they focus on unlocking archives of satellite imagery. So here's some examples of that. So, why did they need to do this in the first place? What was going on over at GA? They have, and they continue to have, because we've launched one site on the platform so far, but they have a number of other sites. They have a lot of technologies hosted in many places, internal and external, for all of their different programs. So this makes it hard to maintain, and also to have a consistent experience for their users. If a user is going from one site to another on, that's built with different technologies, then, it can be a little disconcerting and a little bit confusing. So as we mentioned before, their kind of big picture goal was to create an efficient, cost-effective, secure, resilient digital experience platform that allows users to discover, identify, and consume Australian Earth data. So they have a bunch of data that they collect, and they want to be able to share that with everyday people, so just all the citizens, but also people in industry and academics, so that they can do research. So having that data be highly accessible, obviously, they want to be as efficient and cost effective as they can, and have the system be very secure and resilient. So so those were kind of the big picture goals. And then as we looked at more specifically for this pilot project, we thought of, some of the kind of important elements that we wanted to focus on. So one is no duplication. We, don't want to have to worry about, things getting stale or out of sync. So along those lines, being able to share content both within the site itself, across pages, but also between sites. Really wanted to make sure that the content editing experience was, as good as we could get, especially because, their content editors are using all sorts of different systems right now, and it's confusing, and give them a lot of power. Make sure to, comply with all the government regulations. Very easy setup. Make sure that, it doesn't take months or weeks or even days to spin up a new site, right? You want to be able to make that new site within, hours, or ideally even minutes, to be able to start a new site. Have a unified tech platform, which we saw that they're using a number of different technologies right now. They're using a little bit of old Drupal, they're using Squiz and Wix and all sorts of things. So trying to have a unified platform to build off of. And what we talked about before also is, having that consistent user experience, so that people aren't getting confused, like, is this a GA site? Where am I exactly? So having enough consistency across the different web properties. And last, but certainly never least, is accessibility. So baking that in from the ground up. All right. So given the kind of big picture goals and these sort of project goals, we wanted to build a platform that hit all of these, bullets. So it needed to be secure, resilient, scalable, interoperable, configurable, modular, easy to maintain, and accessible. and I'll touch upon, some of these, but scalable, for example, we wanted to be able to allow them in the future to be able to add as many sites as they wanted, not have to worry about that. Configurable, even though we want that consistent user interface across sites, we still want them to be able to, tweak things enough that each site can still have its own voice and still be unique. Modular, we want to be able to allow, plug and play of different components on the page, for example. So this is a screen grab of the old site that was just replaced in August, and we launched the new site August 24th. So this actually came from the Wayback Machine. So we say out with the old and bye-bye Squiz. So I'm going to talk about kind of big pieces of the puzzle first, and then we'll get more into the nitty-gritty of some of those. And it's not just Drupal. But the big picture takeaway is really we're trying to go from this fragmented architecture where pretty much every site is its own stack to a consolidated one, right? We're trying to get economies of scale here where we have one platform and we can spin up a number of sites on that platform. But before we start talking about the tech stack, it's super important that we have a really solid design. And that's where Today came in. They worked with, like I mentioned, the GA team, and specifically a lot with the DEA, the Digital Earth Australia team, in order to really understand what kind of content they had, what kind of content they wanted, how did they want to, message to their users, just, really focused on trying to make a really, really great content strategy and a beautiful design. So they built this really amazing design system in Figma, and it has, all these different components in it, standard sort of things like headers and carousels and content cards and all sorts of great stuff. So at the end of the day, the platform ends up building a static site. For the most part, there is a search element, but otherwise it's just static assets. So CSS, markup, and some JavaScript. So why? That seems to be the trend that where most people are going. And it's, it seems pretty obvious, but it bears repeating, right? We want to make sure it's secure with having a static site to the open public. We can have our CMS behind basic auth or behind a firewall. Keep that secure. There's nothing to attack. It costs less because static assets are just easier to host and serve, right? There's nothing complicated there. There's no database. There's no web server. And because when the user is going to the site, you're not rebuilding those pages every time as they're hitting the site because there's no database, there's nothing. It's just the files are there, they're ready to be served to you. So it's as fast as you can possibly be. And because of that, it's so lean, it's greener, right? It's going to be better for the environment. So as a very big picture, we can look at the technologies that were used for this platform, and we'll go into more detail on these in a little bit, but we kind of can break it up roughly into a backend, a middleware, and a front end. On the back end, we have GovCMS for our CMS hosting. We're using Drupal 9. We're using the JSON API and some helper modules to serve up content from Drupal. In the middleware, we are using GitHub Actions in order to run the builds, and we're using Vue.js for or NuxtJS on top of Vue.js is sort of the middleware, sort of the glue of the system. And on the front end, we've got the Vue components. Algolia is for the search, and QuantCDN is for static serving of those static assets. And we're going to go into more detail. And this is just another way of looking at the same pieces of the technology, just in a more traditional sort of architecture diagram. On the left side, you're going to see more of the GovCMS aspect of the platform. And that includes, they have their own GitLab repository and CI. So all of the Drupal-related code is in GitLab, in the private GitLab for GovCMS. On top of GovCMS, they also provide Akamai and for all of the Drupal security and web application firewalls. So that's on the GovCMS side. On the right side of the diagram, that's more of the middleware and front end aspect of the architecture. And that we have the middleware and front end code is in GitHub. So we have two repos, and we use GitHub Actions in order to do the build process. And that ends up firing up Nuxt and using Nuxt in order to build the site and generate the static assets. And then those are sent off to Quant in order to do the static web posting. So at the end of the day, we want to have, something that looks like this. These are actually put together by today that in the Figma, in the design system, is like, okay, well, if we're going to put our pieces together, these are sort of representations of what things are going to look like. They're going to have, icon cards and carousels and highlights and headers. And on the right here, we have a search, which is the only dynamic aspect of it. Okay, so now we're going to take a deeper dive into some of these different pieces. So GovCMS is the CMS hosting. So that's on the Drupal side. And that is, it started about 7 years ago. It's operated out of the Department of Finance in Australia. They have roughly 100 agencies and almost 350 sites on that. One of the newest sites is the site that we launched in August, which is the dea.ga.gov.au site. Welcome to go hit that now and look around. It's looking pretty good. So they have a lot of different sites that they host, and it's one of the more popular hosting, Drupal hosting environments within Australia. So GovCMS has two different pricing models that you can use. One is software as a service and one is platform as a service. So software as a service, as we see on the left here, that's where you're getting the full stack. You're going to get everything, all the platform and the, GitLab and all that. You can get your Drupal installation and then even a base theme and some components and things so that you can work off of that. They have some content types and you can add more, but it has all the basic things there. Now, for our project, we use platform as a service. So we're not using any of the theming as a decoupled. So we're not using any of the theming aspects of GovCMS. And we're really just relying on that underlying platform infrastructure. We use, so there's Docker Lagoon, which is from Amaze.io, and in that GitLab repository for the Drupal code. So big picture for the Drupal architecture, and this just gives you a rough idea of the complexity. I'm actually going to go from bottom right to top left. So there are roughly 100 modules, a little more than 100 modules. And a lot of those are out of the box with the GovCMS distribution. We didn't have to add really that many custom or contributed modules ourselves. We added 2 custom. One is for a reusable component that we're using for paragraphs. And the other one is so that when you save content, it kicks in and triggers the GitHub Actions build process. So those are our custom modules. And then for the contributed, we added, I don't know, things like link it or, there's just a few little things that we added. We have 21 paragraph types, and just to give you an idea, in the design system, there are roughly about 35 design components. So we're kind of trying to have the paragraphs be a little more flexible and map, one paragraph to multiple design components when possible. We have 13 vocabularies, which may seem like a lot, but a number of those are for content tagging, like product types or related, different media tags, finding content either within Drupal or allowing those to be used within search. So, and we'll talk about one of the important ones, just making sure nobody's gonna, oh, thanks, Suchi. And okay, and then roles, we have 4 roles that we use, and 3 of them are from GovCMS out of the box, which is the administrator, the content editor, and the content approver or reviewer. And the one that we added special was a site manager, and that manager can deal with vocabularies, it can deal with users and menus. So just a little bit of, extra beyond what a content editor can do. I've got 3 menus. That's so in this case is for Digital Earth Australia. So it's the DEA header menu, their footer menu, and then there's a global footer menu that can be used on all of the sites. So that one's also there. For media types, we've got image and remote video are the 2 media types that we're using, with two custom text formats. So we are not allowing any embedded media for our text formats. So we're not using the rich text format. Decided to enforce them to do images and videos as separate components, so that those text formats that we're allowing are pretty minimal formatting, like headings and bold and things like that. One view is more for internal content editing. That's for entity references. And there's one content type to rule them all that we'll talk about now. So there are 2 very important pieces of the Drupal architecture that are worth taking a little bit of time understanding. So there's a site's vocabulary, and that allows you, this is actually a little bit architected similar to SDP, which is a single digital presence out of Australia, where they have a site vocabulary, and that's where you define every site that is associated with that particular Drupal instance. So it's kind of a similar model. And in this case, this is showing DEA, and we've got an identifier, a name, and whatever domains it's using, homepage. They can do site-wide alerts and specify them. They can specify the header menu and the footer menu and some extra text that goes there. They can optionally specify social media links and some Google Tag Manager related analytics information. So the site's vocabulary has a term for every single site. And so it's very easy to create a new site. You just create a new term in that vocabulary and you fill in these tabs, and some of which are optional. And there's a fallback for some of the generic stuff. So it's really easy to fill in the basics for a new site. Now for the flexible page content type, there's just one content type that sort of, that just handles all of the content on the whole site. And that was done so that all of the different pages that are generated could leverage this design system. And this was just a very straightforward way of dealing with it, so that they could be pretty flexible about how they build each of their pages. And like on this first tab, we got basic, and that's the publishing information. Page name says what site, so which site's vocabulary term is the primary. You can also specify additional sites that you want this content to be able to be used on as sort of secondary content. And one interesting thing here is it's got this page type, and since there's only one content type, We still wanted the concept of a content type, but naming things is hard, called it page type, and we've got a number of things that you can, that's actually driven by vocabulary. So you can specify, this is a product page, or this is a news page, or events page, or so forth. And since it's a vocabulary, you can go and add other terms there if you wanted to have different types of pages. So a couple other tabs that are worth noting here. The reference tab, that is kind of metadata for the content itself, and you can specify things like title and summary, image and links, things like that. And that information is going to be able to use by other content when it wants to reference this content, and it can put that content into a card. So you might show that in a carousel, you might show it in a search result, something like that. The one on the right, we've got the paragraphs. So there's a number of paragraphs that you can add, pretty standard sort of things you would expect, images and videos, content cards. And, there is a flexible body, sort of the text format that we talked about, and some formatted things. So that gives you an idea of what the content editor would see if they wanted to add additional components. In the background there, you'll see that there's a search element. There is actually a configurable search, which they can add to a page, which is pretty cool. And one feature that's been really handy is been able to reuse components. So in this case, we're using paragraphs. If there was a paragraph used on the home page and on the about page, they want to use that same paragraph as is, then they have a mechanism for doing that. And in this example here, on the left, we have something they call the master components page, where they're adding a bunch of different components. On the image on the right, we see that they've said, oh, I want to pull something from that master components page, and I want to pull the join our community. So then they'll just be able to show that on the other content. And this has been extremely useful. So at the end of the day, Drupal is doing a lot. Yeah, you can do the site setup with the vocabulary. There's some fallbacks, like if you didn't have social media links for your site, it'll fall back to the GA specific ones. You can reuse these components. We allow content cloning, so you can set up a page and then clone that and edit the new page. We talked about the reference content, customizable search, which we'll see have a sneak peek at in a bit. There's all sorts of tagging available through vocabulary for search, and then those can be used later for facets, and sharing content between sites. And a couple things that they did, not necessarily on the first site, which is the DEA site, but as they've been building some other sites on this platform, so they've been making page type templates. So in this case, the screenshot here shows a CS, which is community safety product template. And they have just set up like, oh, okay, here's a product one, here's a news one, here's, a project, template, and then they do the kind of scaffolding and placeholder text for all of that. And then they can use the cloning feature and then fill in the content, the real content for each of the pages from there. So that's worked out really well for them. Another thing is that master components template, which I showed with the reusable components, is they could have just one place per site where they have some, generic components they want to be able to share on multiple pages. All right, so that's, there's a lot going on in Drupal. At the end of the day, that was in order to support all these amazing Vue front-end components, right? So today, they built this design system, and then they actually coded that all up in Vue and made all of these Vue components to support the design system. And they documented that in something called Storybook. So for the front enders out there, you probably know what this is, but for everyone else, it's just a way of being able to show your design system in a really easy to use way. And this is useful not only for the end user, like the client, in order to see what components are available, but it's also super useful for like the middleware person or backend person to see like, oh, well, what are the different properties that I could pass in? What are the different values available for those? So very, very useful documentation to have. And you need to glue everything together, right? So we have these front-end Vue components, and we have this back-end Drupal, all this paragraph content and related data that we need to marry together, right? And that's where NuxtJS comes in. NuxtJS is a static site generator that is built on top of Vue.js. So it was sort of a pretty obvious choice, and since the front end was built with Vue, to decide to use Nuxt. And you get, because at the end of the day you get static site, a static site, you get the performance SEO benefits from that. One thing I should note is that we did not use Drux.js, which is a Nuxt.js Drupal tool, and actually exactly right now, Stuart Clark is giving a session on Drux. So if you're interested in this aspect of the platform, then I definitely would check that out when the recordings are available. And we're also hoping to have a BOF in about half an hour for anything decoupled. So we had put that up there on the schedule, and then it disappeared about an hour ago. So we're hoping it's back up there. But hopefully you can join us if you have an interest in decoupled in general, or if you have more questions about this or Drux, for example. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit more about the process that happens sort of in the middleware. And middleware is a little bit fuzzy because things are talking to each other. The lines are a little bit blurred in some cases, but generally speaking, like we said, backend, middleware, front end. On the back end, that's where we saw that we have our site configuration. That was like the vocabulary term. We have all our site content, our menu items, our nodes, our paragraphs, so forth, right? So we have all that there in Drupal 9, and we're using JSON API along with some help, additional helper modules. And what happens is you save content, or you change content, or you delete content in Drupal, and that hits our custom module, or one of two custom modules, and that triggers a GitHub Actions build process. So in GitHub Actions, there's various configuration in there, and that does some setup, and then at some point it's telling Nuxt, okay, Nuxt, go ahead and do your magic, right? So then we have code in Nuxt, which goes and pulls that content and data from Drupal through JSON API. It does some mapping and some massaging as needed in order to map that over to that Vue.js design system. And once the build is done, and the build is done, everything's been mapped, it generates a static version of the site. And that static version is then deployed to Quant. So the Quant CDN it's a CDN, so Content Delivery Network, but it's a place where you can serve static assets or a Jamstack application. So yeah, so here's Quant, and it has all of the things that you would expect from a CDN, all the traditional stuff, but it has more, and it's particularly interesting for Drupal, since we're at DrupalCon here. There's a module available that you can use that you can actually go straight from Drupal into Quant if you want. And in our case, that didn't make sense because we had this Vue.js front end that we needed to work with. But if you are just completely in Drupal and you want to push out a static site, check out that module. Works with a number of static site generators, including, like we're using Nuxt in this case. There's an integrated search, and that's at Algolia that we mentioned previously. And yeah, it works for static and Jamstack. Something really cool about Quant is if for some reason you need to go and edit on the what they call the edge, right? So you're not editing in Drupal, you're not doing it on the back end, but you needed to go and make a change, in the static assets, you can do that. So you can edit at the edge. And the other thing is, it tracks everything. So it supports the Archives Act, which is an Australian thing, I believe, out of the 80s. But you can have infinite revisions, which is amazing, and review, old snapshots and roll back to those. So it's kind of like your own Wayback Machine, but even cooler because you can go and roll back to those and, and check them out whenever you want. So pretty awesome. So just a quick look, this is the site search using Algolia. Here we're gonna type in land. We're gonna have a number of results. So, pretty kind of standard sort of site search. You can go and try that out on the site right now. And just the main thing to note here is we saw in Drupal where we had that reference tab where we could specify a title and an image and summary and all that. That's the text that's showing up here. So you'll see that that's the reference content, and so that way that you get that consistent experience. You can view the same content, for those cards. In this case, it's more of a teaser format, but for there versus if it was in, like a carousel. Now, we built a much fancier search as well. And this is a configurable faceted search that they have available when they're creating pages. So they can create a search page and then specify, what filters or facets they would like on the left, or they don't even have to have any if they didn't want to, but so those are optional. And yeah, this again, the little cards there are showing the content coming from that reference tab in Drupal. All right, so what does the data look like? We have launched one site so far, DEA, on this platform, and let's look at some of the data. These are build times. So what happens is you save or edit or delete or add content in Drupal, and that triggers a build. So GitHub Actions, starts doing a build, it uses Nuxt, does its thing, and then it pushes out to Quant. So this is the build time. This is taken straight from GitHub Actions, and this gives you an idea of, build times roughly 3.5 minutes. They've gone a little bit longer as there's been more content on a particular site. Each site builds on its own, so it doesn't matter, if someone's adding content on another site, that's not going to affect your site, but each site, has its own build process. All right, security looking pretty darn good there. So we got an A+ for Qualys, and we have an A from Probly. So yeah, pretty darn secure, which is one of those buckets that we were trying to fill. And as a lot of people know, Lighthouse, take it with a grain of salt, but something that people a lot of times look at, and very happy that accessibility is looking really solid. SEO's pretty high up there. Performance, not too shabby. That's a pretty respectable score. This is desktop, so obviously the mobile was a little bit lower. The performance, things that could be tuned there, a little bit with image optimization and a little bit on the JavaScript. Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about challenges and wins. Big win, we launched a site on the platform almost on time. We're supposed to do it within 10 weeks of starting the backend and middleware part of the project, and it was a little bit closer to 12 weeks, but launched and happy. And one thing to note is we did not make any changes after that went live for like 2 or 3 weeks because it was just working and it was just fine. So big win there. And then we got this wonderful quote from Nathan Wall at GovCMS. Very, very, very pretty. So we got 3 varies there, not too shabby. And of course, there's always stuff that can be a challenge. So we got a number of things here. This is very ambitious. No one's done this exact architecture before, so you know, that's always a challenge. So finding, you know, the right team and all that. Fortunately, we were able to do that. You know, budget, timeline, those are always sort of those sort of things. And you know, it was complete. So middleware is completely custom. We weren't able to leverage a framework, you know, like Druxt, and then, you know, just handling edge cases because it was custom, and you know, those build times 3.5 minutes. Yeah, we'd like to get those down. We have some ideas of how to do that. On the back end, you know, we had a lot of complexity mapping those components to the front end components because we had to support roughly 35 front end components. So that was interesting. Naming things is always hard, and so no different here. That was sort of a project-wide really thing about naming things and matching things between back-end, middleware, and front-end. And then I think the biggest thing, you know, with the front end is we had today, I mean, an amazing team. They were working on the front end. And Salsa was working on the middleware and back end. And, you know, anytime you have more than one organization working in parallel, it's just a little harder to coordinate. But, you know, it was a little bit of a challenge, but not certainly worked out great. Okay, so the wins, so these are all of the same checkboxes or bullets that we had for the goals early on. And so secure, resilient, scalable, interoperable, configurable, modular, easy to maintain, accessible. So we checked all the boxes. A couple of them, we could still do some more. So in resilience, want to add some more error checking and things like that. For maintenance, mainly like more documentation and sort of a standard thing that you could never have too much documentation. So for project wins, again, we checked all the boxes. So no duplication, content sharing, great editor UX, compliance, easy setup, unified tech, consistent UX, and accessibility. So we're doing great there. A couple of them that we could do, we want to continue to work on was the content sharing, especially between sites, because that's a little bit more challenging to, get it working, more seamlessly. And then the editor UX. So because of, it's complex, right? So if we could maybe hide fields based on other things that they're choosing, I think we can make that even easier for them. All right, the future of the platform. Okay, we're going to launch more sites. We've got EFTF, Exploring for the Future, coming up very soon, and community safety probably right after that. So I would expect in the next month or so, then we should have a couple more sites up and running. There's a backlog, no surprise there, right? All sorts of things we can do, and I see that we're getting low on time, so I won't go through all of these, but lots of things we can do to make things better. And one really cool thing is we're hoping, so we have the near-term things in the backlog, but longer term, we're hoping to be able to extend the platform in order to handle other data sources. So rather than just mainly editorial content, which is a lot of what we're looking at, would be like, can we integrate, map data and other, GIS information, things like that. Sort of more rich Earth data. And then, what about beyond Geoscience Australia, right? This is an amazing platform that was built for them, but fortunately they were, everyone was really smart about it. And although it's a great fit for them, it's actually pretty generically architected. So the idea is maybe other agencies could use this. I mean, not even necessarily just in Australia, right? But Australia or beyond. So I think one of the takeaways here is if any of this is interesting you, the design system, for example, is beautiful. It's pretty generic. I mean, it's not really specific to GA. I mean, it's solving a lot of common problems, right? So maybe you're interested in you know, being able to use the design system, or maybe we roll in some things into GovCMS, like the being able to push content straight into Quant, for example, so you have a static site. So there's a lot of different possibilities here that we're talking to a lot of different people and brainstorming. So I think the big takeaway here is, if you have interest in any piece of this, just let us know, and you know, we can kind of loop you in to see, you know, where we can take this beyond GA. Now I see that we're pretty much out of time. We are hoping to have a BOF in about 15 minutes. So hopefully that got back up onto the calendar. You're welcome to email me questions or send me messages in Twitter if you like. The slides are available. It's an earlier version, so it's almost exactly the same, but there's some slight tweaks since then. And I will, if you have written questions into the chat, I will write them down and I will compile them, and I'll make sure to answer those and get those up and tweet those out within the next week so that people have answers for that. Hopefully you can do contribution this week, doing a lot of different types of contribution. There's mentored contribution in general. So even if you've never contributed before, please come out and you know, take a look. It's a lot of fun. I want to say thank you, and feel free to contact me, LinkedIn, Twitter, email. It's all good. And yeah, I will leave that one up there, but I will jump into the chat just real quick and see what we've got. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and feel free to ping me. You're also welcome to ping me in Hopin. Hopefully, we will be doing that BOF just in about 14 minutes, but appreciate you coming, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.